Welcome back to Touchline Talk. Alright, so we're sitting here in the middle of the international break. Just kind of minding their own business. Players are, in camps with their countries, playing in the Nations League, playing in friendlies, whatever. And then all of a sudden, here comes the proposal from Manchester United and Liverpool, along with the head of the EFL, Rick Perry, to completely redo large, significant portions of the way that the English soccer pyramid is set up. They're calling it Project Big Picture, and here are basically the highlights. Community Shield, Carabao Cup, no more. The big clubs don't want to play in these competitions. They would rather be playing more European games. They'd rather have things spaced out more. They'd rather be able to play in international markets during preseason for tournaments like the International Champions Cup. That's why they want these things gone. Premier League would go from 20 teams to 18. And then you would have a 4-team playoff for the final promotion spot. So your bottom two in the Premier League automatically get relegated. Your 16th place team and then 3, 4, 5 in the championship would be in a playoff to see which team gets the last spot in the Premier League for the next season. This is not uncommon. You see it plenty of other places. Bundesliga has it, for example. So that's part of this as well. Then you have the financial aspects of this. Two things in particular. An influx of cash to the lower league, the football league teams right now to make sure they don't go bankrupt while the coronavirus pandemic is still going on and they can't have fans in stands. And a reorganization of the way that the Premier League's revenue is shared to give the lower league teams a much higher proportion of that money. Those are two significant changes that would go in here as well. And then finally, instead of your 14 out of 20 Premier League teams needing to give their approval for something like it is now, you need 6 of the 9 longest serving clubs. So of course this is built particularly for the Big Six to give them control of the Premier League essentially. And that is where you're seeing so much resistance to this, is it's being positioned and described by its opponents as a power grab. And it absolutely is. It's not like Liverpool and United are doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. They're doing this because it's in their own best interest. So the sticking point on this thing is going to be the changes in voting to the 6 of the 9 longest serving clubs, which basically gives the Big Six free reign to do things like take more of the TV revenue and change the way that the revenue is broken up. Things like that are going to fundamentally change the dynamics within the Premier League. That part of it is why this is never going to happen in its current form. At least I find it really hard to believe. And particularly because the biggest losers in this proposal are your middle-of-the-pack Premier League teams. Your Burnleys, your Aston Villas, your Newcastles, Brightons, whatever team you want to pick. Because what this is doing is it's taking away their one team, one vote, equal piece of the pie in terms of the decision-making process, while simultaneously making it less lucrative to be in the Premier League. Part of what this redistribution of the money is going to do is it's going to de-incentivize teams throwing caution to the wind to try and get into the Premier League because the TV revenue is so much greater there. It's trying to prevent, It's trying to prevent teams like Fulham spending £100 million or whatever it was, and then going right back down and then being in a really bad financial spot. So being in the Premier League doesn't carry as much weight if the financial benefits aren't as great. So they're getting hit on both sides there. They're losing their vote, and they don't have this financial cushion that kind of helps give them this massive advantage over the other teams at the top of the championship in terms of being able to stay in the Premier League. You can go see a Brighton or an Aston Villa or even a Bournemouth when they were up splash all this money because they have it, because they're in the Premier League and they're getting this TV revenue every year. So that's the sticking point. That's the teams you're not going to be able to convince. But here are the two incredibly important things that this proposal does do. One, it solves that exact problem I just talked about with Fulham. We have got to stop making it justifiable or logical for teams to spend beyond their means in the hopes of getting to the Premier League, because then they can go pay for it and it'll change the financial complexion of their club. We have got to stop that because the playoff is too unpredictable and it's just not sensible. It's bad management. So by giving these championship teams more money and smoothing out the gap between Team 17 in the Premier League and Team 3 in the Championship, we're going to have more financially stable clubs. That is incredibly important. That's one of the biggest flaws existing right now, and a problem that needs to be addressed. The second thing is the money going to the EFL teams right now. The lower leagues are dying during this pandemic, and nobody has gotten them any money yet. Everybody knows they need money, but it hasn't happened. So at least this proposal gives them the money they need to survive and get past this until they can go make their money from fans coming through the stands again. So yeah, Manchester United and Liverpool are going to ask for something in return for making all of these concessions. And they've got the support of the most powerful person in the EFL, in Rick Perry, which matters a great deal here. But what you're not going to be able to convince people with this, I don't think. And particularly the people that matter. You're probably going to be split in the championship. Some teams like it, some teams don't. There are going to be probably a couple Premier League teams where it piques their interest. I was reading in The Athletic today that some teams want to think about it. But I just find it hard to believe it's going to get the support it needs. So what needs to happen next is, and it sounds like this might actually be what happens, you got to get to the table and you got to be willing to negotiate based off of this. Because nobody else has come up with anything. There's been talks and everybody acknowledging we need to do something to save these lower league clubs, but nothing's happened. Nobody has actually put together a proposal and said, here's how we think we can solve the problem. And quite frankly, generally speaking, this proposal solves the problem. It does so at a cost, but being a power grab by the most influential teams in the league and most financially powerful teams in the league. And there are going to be plenty of people that argue it's not worth that price. And I'm not here to disagree with that. So take this proposal and work with it. Manchester United, Liverpool, be willing to make some more concessions, because you can't expect people to meet you here. You got to go halfway from this proposal. So instead of 6 of the 9 longest serving teams, maybe it's 9 of 12 or something. I don't know. Or you find a way to give, maybe it's giving your 9 longest serving clubs 2 votes and then everybody else 1. Maybe it's something entirely different. But if United and Liverpool are willing to continue to work with that part of this, to make it feel like they're not just completely screwing over everybody else in the Premier League, then we're really onto something. But at least somebody's trying to do something. You would have hoped this came from, whether it's the Premier League itself, the British government, somebody. It had to come from United and Liverpool. They're trying. Let's not get it twisted and think that this is coming from the goodness of their hearts, as I said before, and that they're really trying to do this as an act of service. No, they absolutely have a vested interest, and they're trying to benefit out of it too. There's no way around that. But they are doing some good things here. There are some ideas that are actually really important that we should be paying attention to and implementing soon. Which is why I think it's important to not just scoff at this. There are parts of it that I really like, parts of it I don't like so much. There's also the reality that playing against a big club in a Carabao Cup game is a huge source of revenue for lower league teams. But you also get that in the FA Cup, so maybe that's a sacrifice you have to make. And there's also the reality that just nobody cares about the League Cup. I mean, you look at some of those teams, those starting 11s these Premier League teams are throwing out there. It's squashed in the middle of Premier League games. You're not going to make your starters play another game. If you lose, you lose. Maybe it helps bring back a little bit of the pedigree of the FA Cup too if you only have 1 cup. I have no issue getting rid of the Community Shield. Doesn't bother me at all. If that's the price to pay for actually saving these lower league teams and forcing people to be responsible with their money and giving teams the resources to feel like they don't need to go spend beyond their means to get to the Premier League, I'm all for it. That is one of my biggest beefs with English soccer right now, is the fact that there is such a huge gap between Aston Villa and Swansea City when they are pretty close to the same team, or at least have been the past couple seasons. Villa found a way to get up, then they found a way to stay up, and now they went and spent for Ollie Watkins and they're playing out of their minds. Still early, we'll see if they can keep it up. But you get the point. It should not be that different. Being in the Premier League should not make that much of an impact on your club. You should not be incentivized to go spend recklessly with the hopes that if you can get there and you can stay up, then you'll be able to pay for all the money and recover all of that money that you just spent. That's not how this should work. So, something needs to happen. This is an idea that is worth discussing further. There are, of course, vested interests here, and United and Liverpool acting in their own self-interest. So can we get to a point where everybody can agree on this? Can people come to the table willing to negotiate, willing to concede more in order to make this happen? Because it's not working in this current form, but that's okay. That's how negotiations work. This is one side's proposal. But at least it's a proposal, and it has some really good ideas. So let's work from here and figure this out. Because teams are going to go bankrupt, and something needs to happen, and somebody has an idea, so let's work with it.